According to the Weekend Province newspaper, roses are great, chocolates too, but cuddling and lots of it can do wonders for your sex life. Every 2 weeks or so, Dr. David McKenzie, sex therapist, couples counselor, drops in with more insightful relationship advice, and it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. David McKenzie back to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Morning, Fanny.
Morning. A lot of pressure these days with that day coming up on Thursday, don't you know?
Well, my wife,
chocolate help?
Chocolate helps. In fact, it's interesting, one of the latest studies that have come out show that chocolate's actually a drug, not a food, and that it increases libido and desire in women.
Oh, in women?
Yeah, in women. Yeah, in women.
Let's go back to the research table.
So I bought my wife 12 pounds of chocolate.
Of course, yeah. And one day we'll jumpstart those guys.
Exactly.
Don't you know? I was reading the newspaper in the weekend. It said cuddling is a big part of loving and all of that, and that actually some people prefer to cuddle. Well,
it's interesting because they did a study of men who hold babies, and they tested their testosterone as they were doing so. And the more domesticated a male becomes, the more like he'll hold a baby or cuddle, his testosterone levels go down. So for a man, cuddling is warm and cozy, but it does not increase sexual desire.
As a doctor, do you know why some people are very comfortable with touching and cuddling and closeness, males and females, and some are not? Some of us were raised in families who didn't touch.
I know.
As you know.
I love massages. My wife can't stand them. And actually, I don't have an answer for that question, except the fact that some like touch and some don't.
I'm wondering if it's what you were comfortable with growing up, if you had a huggy mother.
Yeah.
But I had a huggy mother and it drove me crazy.
Yeah. Well, I had a huggy mother and I like being touched. My wife, I don't think, had a huggy mother and she doesn't care to be touched. So you may have a point there.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Quit kissing me.
Yeah, yeah. But some people, they actually just feel queasy. They feel strange when they're touched. Just get away from me. You know?
Or you see people walking down the seawall, some holding hands.
Yeah, yeah.
Some not.
Yeah.
Or you grab somebody's hand and they just want to get away.
But that kind of touch is not necessarily an indication of how close they are. It's just personal preference.
Exactly, because it's our souls that are supposed to touch, right?
That's right.
The soulmate in us. Touch the soul.
Well, the body's important too.
Exactly. Last time, I think last Valentine's, you were here and talked about the historical roots of Valentine's. Where did it all begin?
Well, there's a lot of confusion. There were a couple of St. Valentines, one from Russia and then one under Claudius II in Rome, who did secret marriages. But the modern day understanding of Valentines actually comes from the 14th century, when Geoffrey Chaucer wrote a poem called The Parliament of Fowls in celebration of the wedding of Richard II to Anne of Bohemia. And he claimed in that poem that on Valentine's Day all the fowls of the air mate. So we still have residues of that in Cupid with the wings, the dove of love, you know. So if we won't go any further with that.
The dove of love.
Yes.
I'll use that one of these days. Where is the dove of love? What if you don't have a dove of love in your life? And I know some feel Valentine's is just a commercial holiday, a Hallmark day, who cares? But what if you don't have a dove of love? What are some things you can do to feel loved?
Well, I believe all of life is a celebration, and I think we should find all sorts of excuses to celebrate personally. So we celebrate Valentine's. But for those who don't have a love in their life, there's all sorts of other ways that you can celebrate that. Going out with friends, going out with mixed company, hooking up with people even online and in respectable dating sites and so on. Get out and start to have some fun and enjoy the other gender or your same gender if you're gay or lesbian. Get out there and mix up. You know?
As love grows old, love grows cold. Old English ballad, I think. As love grows old, love grows cold. There was a suggestion the other day in one of the articles, I think it was the National Post who did the big thing on love and sex in the paper this weekend, that as we grow old with somebody, they irritate us more.
I think that's just grouchy old men, isn't it?
I don't know.
I don't know if that has to do with love.
They did a study, yet another study. It said, you know, some couples grow old gracefully together and love each other more at some level, but a lot of couples, they just irritate each other more and they're less tolerant. They stay together.
Yeah, but it's also interesting. Again, you can't go by that because I've met lots of couples where they're irritable or feisty, but underneath there's a deep, abiding companionship and love and even passion. It's hard to know what some of those old ballads mean. Do they mean, you know, companionship and love and long history, or do they mean sexual lust?
Right.
And sexual lust cannot last.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. But
See, in the
we expect passion to remain. There's almost a pressure in society. Oh. We expect passion to remain high. Yeah. People say, well, if you have a really good relationship, you have hot sex. Not necessarily so.
But there's a difference between passion and lust. Passion is that all-inclusive, that part of ourselves that drives us, that part of ourselves that gives us the energy of life. I remember Ma Murray of the Lillooet Times, or whatever the newspaper was, said, sex is the elixir of life. But passion is not sexual lust. For instance, Christians celebrate the passion of Christ. There are people who are passionate about medicine. It doesn't mean they're sexual.
No, passionate about chocolate, passionate about ballet.
Exactly. But sexual lust is something different. And in the first throes of a relationship, one of my clients, who's a PhD in chemistry, told me that a chemical called phenylethylamine is secreted in the brain, which is the same as an opiate. And so when people are in those first throes of love, they're like high on heroin. And they make crazy decisions and do stupid things when you're intoxicated. You never get married in the first 2 months of meeting somebody.
Not usually.
Well, you shouldn't.
No, I think you get to know them a little better if you want it to last, unless you're really lucky.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, the body eventually makes its own immune system, its own defense against that, and it neutralizes it. And then that's when you come down from the high, and you think, oh my gosh, am I still in love with this person? It's not the same.
Right. And when the buzz wears off, what I have found in good relationships, and I'm not the doctor, if somebody encourages you to be autonomous, to completely be yourself, and you encourage them to be them, and you don't try to be like them. And if he wants to bungee jump, you might try it once, and then you say, darling, my darling
it's your
Bob,
bag. But Gottman's
bungee jumping, your bag.
But Gottman's research backs you up on that.
Really?
Yes. In fact, he says the one common denominator that will end up separating couples is if they're trying to make the other into a clone of themselves. To accept each other's value system, worldview, different upbringing, a different take on things. That's what makes marriages interesting.
I'm a dog person, you're a cat person, so you have to embrace that. Say, I think it's swell. You like Labradors.
This whole issue of compatibility, you'll see these ads on TV, you know, scientific studies on compatibility. That only goes so far. By the way, that's not backed up by peer review and critical evaluation. Right. This whole notion of compatibility being based on scientific fact. Compatibility, I remember the F. Lee Bailey, the lawyer, once said, in America today, to be innocent is at best helpful. Well, I would say compatibility is at best helpful, but it does not determine a close or vibrant relationship. It's how we handle conflict, how we allow the other person, like you say, to be him or herself.
And someone gets you. I know we talked about this last time. Somebody just gets you, and they think you're wonderful. However you are, however you present.
But I'm also willing to challenge that, Fanny. I'm willing to say that, yeah, that's nice when it happens, but sometimes it takes a long time to get the other person. But the joy and the thrill of being in a relationship is that you spend that time and wrestle and fight and love to get to know the other person. It takes the average couple 5 years to adjust sexually.
Really?
Yeah.
Sexually?
Sexually.
5 years? I didn't know.
Yeah, yeah. The first 3 years of a relationship are those power struggle years I've mentioned before. But a lot of couples struggle sexually, I mean, you know. And so, yeah.
Sexually because of the mental game, the physical game,
well, the first time,
the self-esteem thing. Why?
Because sex triggers all of those memories, all of those things within us. Sex is the arena in which so many other things in our lives and in our relationship get worked out. It's the arena in which other things get worked out. So when a couple comes in and says, we're having a problem with sex, I take that very seriously. But inevitably, it points back to other things in the relationship or other things within them from their family of origin.
When I was raised, you think when you're 14 and your boyfriend tries to reach down your shirt and you say, no, like constantly you fend him off, right? And so then you marry this man and you're now 24 and you want him to reach down your shirt, and he just wants to have sex. And then you're trying to make sense of it, right? You think, well, all those years when you tried foreplay, if that's what it would have been called in those days, I said, no, 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 no. And now, when I would encourage you think it before
But
the
men are
act.
feeling the same way as well, you know, in those lusty years, and they have all those hormones running, and now they start to peter off around the late 40s, early 50s. Now their wives are becoming vibrant and they want sex more. So it's kind of unfair the way nature does that to us.
True. And when you talk about sex drive, the peak periods, are women in their 50s and 60s at post-menopause as sexual, if you're healthy and...
Well, oftentimes they're even more sexual because now they're past the age of childbearing. And there's something deeply psychological about that as well as physical. So, people become more free. They open up with themselves if they're not fearing that they're going to get pregnant and so forth.
Sure, hence older women, younger men.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
That makes sense. It doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, but since the sexual revolution and certainly the second, third wave of feminism, it's opened up women a lot more to their own bodies and their own sensuality.
Sure.
It's no longer shameful to feel like you want to have sex with somebody with a nice body.
How many couples do you get in your office who are attracted to one another because of energy? And do you see what I mean? Like in the movies, they say, I'm just attracted to this person because they're fabulous. Are you seeing that in your office just because somebody's just great, or because somebody's drop dead gorgeous and it's 38, 22, 38?
It's interesting you say that, because I've seen couples in my office in which they're feisty and they're in conflict and they're struggling, and yet there's that deep underlying sense of, I get you, as you say. There's a humor there. And I'll notice some couples in the midst of their arguing, they'll look at each other and start to laugh.
Right.
I mean, that's a tremendous thing to bring into the relationship.
Humor, the best.
Yeah, that's one of the
you're such an
things.
idiot. I know I am, but whatever, darling.
Yeah. Or they'll start to laugh at their foibles.
At their foibles. Yeah. Being able to laugh at yourself, being able to laugh at your mate and not be threatening, how great that is.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't have a sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, for couples that are really in trouble, I always call it the 3 M's of fixing their relationship. And it takes maturity and courage to do this. The first one is mutual respect. You cannot reconcile and fix a marriage if you don't respect your partner. If you're filled with contempt, cannot even get beyond that, there's not a lot of hope for that relationship.
Right.
The second one is motivation. If you're not motivated to make this work, if you've already checked out and are just gathering the evidence to justify checking out, not a lot of hope. And the last one, the big one, is meeting the enemy, which is yourself. If you're not willing to see what part of the equation you play in this, again, it's pretty hopeless.
So if you have a marriage or a relationship that simply lacks oomph, you remember passion.
Yeah. But
kind of.
So, well, if you want to breathe oomph back into that, I think there are 2 things that are important: distance and a willingness to see each other in a different light. Change.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Change,
so mix it
distance.
up, buy new clothes, start going out, doing different things, seeing your partner in a different context. But also the whole issue of meeting somebody in a different way, that's really important.
Okay, so the 3 keys, so I have them right before the 14th.
Yeah.
Mutual respect, motivation to make the relationship work, willingness to meet the enemy, and the enemy is oneself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are issues, of course, that each bring into the relationship. But if we're only in the blame game, saying it's all her fault or all his fault, and if he only did this, I would feel this way, that's
not so.
You got to move beyond that.
Yeah, you've got to change yourself, and you've got to love yourself to love another. We know that. Intellectually, we know that.
Well, that level of conflict, that level of anger, almost 100% of the time, actually is the etiology or the source of that is deep hurt from one's past. It has nothing to do with your partner. And we often end up choosing a partner to keep replicating the deep hurt of the past.
Okay, well, let's end on the Valentine's note.
Yeah.
Every relationship is a gift.
Right, I agree with you.
Okay, and maybe a little chocolate on the side.
Oh, you bet, you bet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for driving in.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Same to you. Dr. David McKenzie is a sex therapist and a couples counselor. And tomorrow, the chef de mission for Canadian athletes for the Vancouver 2010 Games shares her passions for food and for sport. And 2 life coaches who run Fab Love Life workshops give us tips on how to find Mr. Right instead of Mr. Dull Pants or Mr. One Night Stand. And Juno nominee, new artist, singer, songwriter Justin Nozuka steps out of his tour bus to sing for us. Thanks for watching Studio 4. There will be lots more on Shaw TV, only on Shaw TV.